Hey guys, tonight's journey will take us into the gentle thump behind your ribs, the loyal little engine you never have to think about, your heart. So before you settle in, please take a moment to give the video a like and hit subscribe if you're truly enjoying the journey. You can also leave a comment. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's always a small wonder to see people tuning in from so many corners of the world. Now, settle in, take a breath, and let's begin. Nestled in the centre of your chest, just a touch to the left, rests a small muscular chamber. If you lay your palm flat across your sternum, then slide it slightly leftward, you're right over the most faithful companion you'll ever have. Not poetic in shape like the red heart on a greeting card, more like a rugged, asymmetrical fist. If you curled your hand into a loose ball, that's about the size of your own heart, give or take. This unassuming muscle, shaped not like a perfect valentine, but more like a sturdy wedge, has been there since before you had a name. From the first fluttering beats in the darkness of your mother's womb to this moment, as you lie here listening, it has never stopped working. Not once. Even as you slept, as you worried, as you laughed, as you dreamed. You might imagine the heart as sitting perfectly straight in your chest, but in truth, it leans. A quiet tilt to the left, like it's lounging in a favourite chair. This tilt isn't random. It helps the heart's lower chambers, the ventricles, line up perfectly with the major blood vessels. That small angle is the difference between effortless circulation and struggle. If you could look inside yourself, peering past skin, bone and lung, you'd see it tucked just behind your breastbone, between your lungs, closer to your left than your right. The pointed tip of the heart, called the apex, angles down and to the left, almost resting gently against the diaphragm. It's why, when you press your fingers into the soft space just under your left nipple, you can sometimes feel the gentle bump of your heartbeat steady as a metronome. This leftward orientation also explains why the heartbeat often feels more prominent on that side. When doctors place a stethoscope on your chest, they angle it toward this apex to pick up the stronger signals. Surrounding the heart is a protective cocoon called the pericardium, a double-walled sac that holds the heart securely in place. Between its layers is a little pool of lubricating fluid, almost like a cushion, reducing friction as the heart moves. Each time your heart beats, about once every second, it shifts, twists, and recoils in a quiet dance. The pericardium ensures this motion is smooth, like a well-oiled hinge. Though the heart is small, it lives in a neighbourhood full of important neighbours. The lungs wrap around it on either side, pressing close like old friends. The diaphragm lies beneath, moving, rhythmically up and down to help you breathe, and behind it runs your spine, the silent backbone of your body. Every time you take a deep breath, the diaphragm pulls downward, making just a bit more room for the heart to stretch and contract. It's a small, constant collaboration. Breath and heartbeat moving together, neither needing your permission to continue. You could think of the heart as the quiet tenant in the middle of this living architecture. It doesn't make demands. It just hums along, pumping blood to every cell you'll ever have, asking only a bit of oxygen and a little glucose in return. So as you lie here, perhaps feeling the faint flutter under your ribs, remember this. Your heart has always known exactly where to be, not centred perfectly in your chest, but balanced just so. A little left, a little forward, a small detail that makes all the difference in keeping you alive. And that's where we'll pause for now, before we step deeper into its chambers. Let's pick up where we left off, resting our attention gently on the heart's shape and position. Now, let's step inside, past the protective pericardium, through the muscular walls, and into the hidden rooms where each heartbeat begins. Picture the heart as a cosy 4-room cottage tucked inside your chest. 2 small upstairs chambers welcome blood home, while 2 strong downstairs rooms send it on its way again. These chambers, the atria and ventricles, work together in a dance so perfectly timed you rarely notice it happening. Let's start at the top. The atria, your heart's welcoming committee, are the thinner-walled upper chambers. The right atrium waits patiently for blood returning from every corner of your body, collecting it like a host gathering guests at the door. Blood enters through two large veins called the venae cavae, the superior vena cava bringing blood down from your head and arms, and the inferior vena cava carrying it up from your legs and abdomen. In the right atrium, this blood is dark, low in oxygen, tired from its journey. Just across the septum, a wall of muscle that divides the heart into left and right, sits the left atrium. It has a different job altogether. Here, the blood has already visited the lungs, trading carbon dioxide for fresh oxygen. It arrives bright red, lively, ready to fuel every cell. 4 pulmonary veins deliver this renewed blood into the left atrium, a kind of cheerful homecoming after a refreshing trip. The atria have delicate walls, thin compared to the chambers below. That's because their task isn't to push blood very far. They simply fill up, then give a gentle squeeze, sending blood down into the ventricles, your heart's true powerhouses. Now, move your imagination downstairs. The ventricles are built for strength. The right ventricle sits just beneath its atrium, slightly in front of the left ventricle if you picture the heart tilted in your chest. This chamber receives blood from the right atrium and pumps it out through the pulmonary artery to the lungs. The walls here are thicker than those of the atria, strong enough to send blood across the short but important path to your lungs. The left ventricle, though, is the mightiest of them all. Its walls are so robust and muscular that if you could feel it contracting against your hand, you'd sense an astonishing force. The left ventricle is responsible for sending oxygen-rich blood all the way through your body, from the crown of your head to the tips of your toes. Each contraction propels blood into the aorta, the largest artery, where it will branch and branch again into 1,000 smaller pathways. This is why the left ventricle's walls are nearly 3 times as thick as the right. It must be powerful enough to maintain pressure, delivering a steady stream of life to every tissue. Between these chambers is the septum, a sturdy wall of muscle and connective tissue that separates the right side of the heart, carrying deoxygenated blood from the left, which holds fresh oxygen. Without this division, the clean and used blood would swirl together, losing their purpose. The septum keeps everything in order, each side doing its work without confusion. In a way, you could imagine the heart like a grand old house divided down the middle. The right side handles deliveries to and from the lungs, and the left side manages the sweeping highways of your body. Each chamber opens and closes in sequence, a quiet choreography that has been repeating itself since before you were born. And perhaps most quietly remarkable of all, none of this requires your attention. While you sleep, work, or daydream, your atria and ventricles are cooperating in a silent, unbroken cycle. They fill, contract, rest, and fill again, never tiring, never demanding applause. The most essential work you will ever benefit from happens in this 4-chambered cottage, 1 heartbeat at a time. So as you lie here, listening, perhaps feeling your pulse in your wrist or against your ribs, remember. That steady rhythm begins in these 4 rooms, small, hidden, and perfectly enough. Now that we've gently explored the heart's 4 chambers, let's linger a little longer inside and meet the remarkable little gates that guide each heartbeat. They're small, humble structures, thin flaps of tissue, but they do the work of preserving order in a system that can never stop. Picture the heart as a series of hallways between rooms. The valves are the quiet sentinels posted at every doorway, opening to let the flow pass and closing to keep it moving in one direction. They never rest, never falter, snapping open and shut around 100,000 times a day. There are 4 of these valves, each with a specific place and purpose. Let's begin with the tricuspid valve, tucked between the right atrium and right ventricle. The tricuspid is named for its 3 delicate flaps, tri meaning 3, and cuspid meaning pointed. Imagine it like a soft, flexible set of curtains that billow open when the right atrium contracts, letting tired, oxygen-poor blood slip down into the right ventricle. Then, as soon as the ventricle begins to contract, the tricuspid closes firmly. No backflow, no confusion, just quiet precision. Once the right ventricle fills and contracts, the blood needs to leave the heart to visit the lungs. That's where the pulmonary valve steps in. It sits at the mouth of the pulmonary artery, the vessel that carries blood to your lungs. As the right ventricle squeezes, the pulmonary valve opens to let blood surge forward. When the ventricle relaxes again, this valve swings shut, preventing any of that blood from sliding backward into the chamber it just left. Like a courteous usher, it lets each wave pass and then closes the door behind it. On the left side, the mitral valve stands guard between the left atrium and left ventricle. The name mitral comes from its resemblance to a bishop's mitre, a kind of ceremonial hat with two pointed flaps. In fact, the mitral valve is also called the bicuspid valve for this very reason. It has only 2 leaflets, compared to the tricuspid's 3. When freshly oxygenated blood flows in from the lungs into the left atrium, the mitral valve opens and the chamber fills like a cup. Then, with the ventricle's strong contraction, the valve closes firmly to keep the blood moving forward, never back. Finally, there is the aortic valve, perhaps the most important doorman of all. It sits at the gateway to the aorta, the body's grandest artery. When the left ventricle contracts, the aortic valve swings wide to let blood rush into the aorta, beginning its long journey to nourish every cell. And when the ventricle relaxes, the valve shuts tight, preventing any retreat into the heart. All 4 of these valves are made of thin yet incredibly tough flaps of connective tissue, lined with smooth endocardium. They are marvels of natural engineering, strong enough to withstand decades of pressure, light enough to move effortlessly in fractions of a second. You might wonder, what keeps them from flapping the wrong way under pressure? The answer lies in slender, fibrous cords called chordae tendineae, sometimes called the heartstrings. These cords anchor the edges of the tricuspid and mitral valves to small muscle pillars inside the ventricles, called papillary muscles. When the ventricles contract, the papillary muscles tighten these strings, holding the valves steady so they don't invert like umbrellas caught in a gust of wind. It's an elegant mechanism, tiny cords and muscles working in unison to keep every heartbeat flowing just one way. The semilunar valves, pulmonary and aortic, don't have chordae tendineae. Instead, their design allows them to cup shut neatly under backflow pressure, like 3 little pockets that catch the blood and close tightly. Every time you hear that familiar lub-dub, you're hearing valves in action. The lub is the sound of the mitral and tricuspid valves closing as the ventricles contract. The dub is the aortic and pulmonary valves snapping shut as the ventricles relax. A simple, reliable rhythm that plays on moment after moment. So tonight, as you feel your chest rise and fall, know that within you, these 4 unassuming gates are working in perfect synchrony. Not loudly, not dramatically, just opening, closing, guiding the quiet river of your life. Now that we've visited the heart's chambers and met the diligent valves, let's pause for a moment to appreciate the walls themselves. These walls are not simply sacks of flesh that happen to pump blood. They are made of something far more extraordinary, cardiac muscle tissue. If you've ever flexed your biceps or stretched your calves, you've felt skeletal muscle in action. That muscle contracts when you decide to move, when you reach for a cup of tea, when you wave to a friend, when you press your hand against your heart. It waits for your conscious command. But cardiac muscle is different. It is built from specialized cells called cardiomyocytes, each one a miniature marvel designed for tireless work. These cells are striped or striated, like skeletal muscle, giving them the strength to contract with impressive force. But unlike the muscles in your arms and legs, Cardiac cells are woven together in a dense branching network that acts as a single, coordinated unit. Imagine a field of dancers, each with an identical step, moving in perfect synchrony without needing to watch one another. That is the heart. Millions of tiny cells, each capable of contracting on its own, yet all linked by delicate connections called intercalated discs. These discs are like tiny handshake agreements, allowing electrical impulses to pass from cell to cell almost instantaneously. When you hear the heartbeat, lub-dub, lub-dub, you're not hearing a series of independent twitches. You're hearing a wave of contraction that sweeps across the muscle in a single, fluid motion, from the top of the atria to the strong, thick walls of the ventricles. This tissue is remarkable not only because it contracts automatically, but because it never tires. The cells have more mitochondria, those microscopic power plants, than nearly any other cells in your body. These mitochondria generate a constant, abundant supply of energy, ensuring that the heart muscle can beat continuously, day and night, for a lifetime. It's humbling, really, to realise that the same process that allows you to flex your hand also powers your heartbeat, but with such resilience that most people never give it a thought. Even when you sleep, your heart muscle keeps up its quiet work, pulsing around 60 to 100 times per minute. In a single day, that adds up to more than 100,000 beats. More than 2,000 gallons of blood move through your vessels, every beat powered by these small tireless cells. Another special property of cardiac muscle is its ability to create its own rhythm. Unlike skeletal muscle, which waits for signals from the brain and spinal cord, cardiomyocytes can generate and conduct electrical impulses on their own. They're born with this rhythm encoded in their structure, each cell carrying the potential to spark a beat. Still, the heart's rhythm isn't chaotic. It has leaders, specialised patches of tissue that coordinate the timing so the chambers contract in perfect order. We'll explore those natural pacemakers in detail soon. For now, know that every contraction begins with an electrical whisper that races across the intercalated discs, telling each cell when to join in. As you lie here, perhaps with your hand resting lightly over your chest, consider how little you need to do to keep this orchestra playing. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to remind your heart to keep time. This muscle was built to persist, to carry on, to keep you alive in the quietest, most dependable way possible. It's a soft, steadfast promise that no matter where your thoughts drift tonight, your heart will continue, beat by beat, to hold you here. We've explored the heart's chambers and the strong, tireless muscle that powers each beat. Now, let's turn our attention to something that often goes unnoticed: the heart's quiet, protective shell, the pericardium. Imagine, if you will, that your heart is a precious instrument, something between a drum and a pump, tucked away where you can't easily reach it. You wouldn't want this instrument to slide around every time you took a breath or leaned to tie your shoes. That's where the pericardium comes in, a soft, double-layered sac that holds the heart securely in place, like a fitted case for a treasured violin. The pericardium has 2 layers, each with a purpose. The tough outer layer, called the fibrous pericardium, is like a sturdy canvas bag. It anchors the heart to nearby structures, the diaphragm below, the breastbone in front, and the spine behind, so the heart stays centered no matter how you move. This outer layer also acts as a shield, protecting the heart from sudden jolts or friction against the surrounding tissues. Inside this protective covering is the serous pericardium, a delicate double-folded membrane. It has 2 parts: the parietal layer, which lines the fibrous pericardium, and the visceral layer, which wraps snugly around the heart itself. You might hear this visceral layer called the epicardium because it forms the outermost surface of the heart wall. Between these layers is a thin space called the pericardial cavity. Inside it, a few teaspoons of clear fluid provide the quiet magic that lets your heart move smoothly. This pericardial fluid acts as a lubricant, reducing friction as the heart contracts and relaxes. Imagine sliding your hands back and forth over a silk scarf instead of coarse fabric. Each movement glides without catching or scraping. That's what the pericardial fluid does, beat after beat. It's a simple detail, but one that matters more than you might think. Without this fluid cushion, every heartbeat would tug uncomfortably at the tissues around the heart, creating irritation and strain. Over time, this friction could cause inflammation, a condition known as pericarditis. When it happens, it can feel like a sharp pain that worsens when you breathe in. Thankfully for most of us, the pericardium carries out its work in perfect silence. Sometimes, though, the pericardium can fill with too much fluid, a condition called pericardial effusion. If enough fluid accumulates, it can compress the heart and make it harder to pump effectively. Doctors have ways of draining this fluid when necessary, restoring the space and freedom the heart needs to move. The pericardium doesn't just protect, it also creates a gentle boundary that helps the heart stay its proper size. If the heart tries to stretch too far, say if the chambers fill too much, the fibrous outer layer resists, like a gentle reminder to stay within limits. In this way, the pericardium balances freedom and restraint, protection and support. If you think about it, the pericardium is a bit like the invisible backdrop to every performance. It doesn't sing or play an instrument, but without it, the orchestra couldn't keep time so perfectly. It steadies the heart in its small, tilted cradle behind your breastbone, letting the chambers expand and contract in their quiet rhythm. Tonight, as you rest, you may never feel it or notice it, but the pericardium is there all the same, an unseen guardian holding the centre of you in place, providing just enough space for movement and just enough structure to keep your heart safe. We've spent time exploring the chambers, valves, and protective layers that shape your heart. But before we step away from anatomy and into circulation, there is one more story to tell, the story of how the heart nourishes itself. You might imagine that because the heart is always full of blood, it can simply help itself to whatever it needs. But that's not how this faithful muscle gets its fuel. Instead, the heart relies on its own dedicated system of vessels, the coronary circulation. Picture the heart as a city, alive with motion, always working. Like any city, it needs deliveries, oxygen, nutrients, energy, to keep its factories running. The coronary arteries are the delivery trucks, bringing supplies straight to the muscle cells that never rest. It all begins just above the aortic valve, in the very first inches of the aorta. As the left ventricle pushes blood out into the body, a small portion of that blood slips into the openings of the coronary arteries, two tiny doorways in the aortic wall. These openings are called the coronary ostia. From here, blood enters the two main coronary arteries, the left and the right. The left coronary artery quickly branches into two important roads. The first is the left anterior descending artery, or LAD. Cardiologists sometimes call it the widowmaker, because it supplies a large portion of the heart muscle, and a blockage here can be dangerously serious. The LAD travels down the front of the heart, delivering oxygen to the front and bottom of the left ventricle and to part of the septum. The second branch is the circumflex artery, which wraps around the left side of the heart, providing blood to the outer wall of the left ventricle and parts of the left atrium. These two branches work together to supply much of the heart's powerhouse muscle. On the right side, the right coronary artery begins its own journey. It curves around the heart like a quiet path along a garden wall, feeding the right atrium, right ventricle, and the lower portions of both ventricles. It also nourishes the sinoatrial node. The natural pacemaker will meet in detail soon, and the atrioventricular node, the heart's careful timekeeper. From these main arteries, countless smaller branches spread across the surface of the heart, diving inward to deliver oxygen to every cell. Imagine 1,000 little lanes weaving through a city, ensuring that every neighbourhood receives what it needs to thrive. Once the heart muscle has taken what it needs, oxygen and nutrients, the blood returns through the coronary veins. These veins collect the spent deoxygenated blood and funnel it into a large vessel called the coronary sinus, tucked on the heart's backside. From there, it empties quietly into the right atrium, ready to begin its journey to the lungs for renewal. This circulation happens constantly, every moment of your life. Even a brief interruption, a blockage in a coronary artery, can cause damage. That's why heart attacks, or myocardial infarctions, occur when a part of the heart muscle is starved of oxygen for too long. The muscle begins to suffer, and if help doesn't come quickly, it can't recover. But tonight, as you lie here listening, your coronary arteries are quietly performing their duty. Every beat is fueled by this dedicated system, a living network that keeps the heart cells strong, vibrant, and capable of continuing their work. So as you rest, consider this small comfort. Your heart has its own lifeline, a private delivery service that never stops coming to its door. A reminder that even the strongest among us need care, nourishment, and support, without ever having to ask. As we leave the heart's chambers and protective layers behind, let's step into the broader world of movement, because the heart is never working alone. It is part of a vast looping highway where blood travels in two great circuits, pulmonary and systemic circulation. Close your eyes, if you like, and imagine your bloodstream as a pair of intertwined rivers. One river flows through your lungs, collecting fresh oxygen and releasing waste gases. The other loops through every tissue, delivering what those cells need to live. These two pathways are perfectly balanced, connected by the quiet power of your heart. We'll start with the pulmonary circuit. This is the shorter loop, but no less essential. When the right ventricle contracts, it sends a wave of dark, deoxygenated blood out through the pulmonary valve into the pulmonary artery. Unlike most arteries, which carry oxygen-rich blood, the pulmonary artery is unique. It carries this spent blood away from the heart toward the lungs. From the pulmonary artery, the flow branches into left and right pathways, each leading to a lung. Imagine those arteries dividing like the roots of a tree, growing finer and finer until they reach the smallest vessels, capillaries, woven around the millions of tiny air sacs called alveoli. Here, the magic happens. With each breath, oxygen moves from your lungs into your blood, while carbon dioxide slips the other way, to be exhaled. In this delicate exchange, your blood is transformed from dark and heavy to bright and rich with life. Once refreshed, the blood doesn't return by the same route. It flows into the pulmonary veins, 4 of them, 2 from each lung. These veins are the only veins in your body that carry oxygen-rich blood. They deliver it straight into the left atrium, where it will soon begin its journey through the rest of you. This is where the systemic circuit takes over. As the left atrium fills, it passes blood through the mitral valve into the left ventricle, and when that mighty chamber contracts, it launches blood into the aorta, your largest artery, as thick as a garden hose, arching gracefully upward before curving down along your spine. From the aorta, countless branches fan out in all directions. Some rise to your head and arms, others descend to nourish your torso, your legs, even the hidden corners behind your organs. Every tissue in your body receives its share, no matter how near or far. The arteries branch again and again, becoming smaller arterioles, then capillaries. At this tiniest scale, blood moves slowly, patiently delivering oxygen and nutrients, carrying away carbon dioxide and waste. You could picture this as a delivery van stopping at every house, checking off each address before continuing on its way. Once the cargo is delivered, the blood begins its return journey through the veins. Small capillaries merge into larger venules, which join to form veins. In the legs, the veins have tiny valves to keep the flow moving upward, preventing backflow when gravity tries to pull it down. Finally, all these veins merge into 2 great rivers, the superior vena cava, draining your head and arms, and the inferior vena cava, collecting everything below your diaphragm. Both veins return their cargo to the right atrium, completing the circuit. From there, the cycle repeats, over and over, without rest. In a single minute, your entire blood volume, about 5 litres, makes this round trip. In a single day, your heart moves the equivalent of 2,000 gallons of blood through these pathways. And you, lying here in the quiet dark, never have to think about it. So as you feel your own breath rising and falling, know that in the space of a few heartbeats, your blood has travelled from your chest to your lungs, out to your fingers and toes and back again. A ceaseless, silent journey, powered by that small, steady pump beneath your ribs. Let's linger a little longer inside this looping highway and follow the path not as an observer but as a traveller. Imagine just for a moment that you're a single red blood cell, small, pliant, almost weightless, beginning your endless circuit through the body. You'll need a name, of course. Let's call you Ruby. Right now you're drifting in the right atrium, having just returned from your last tour. You've spent the past few seconds visiting muscles, bones and organs, delivering oxygen and collecting carbon dioxide. You're carrying that carbon dioxide now, and you feel heavy with it, ready for renewal. The atrium walls shiver gently, and before you know it, the tricuspid valve swings open, and you slip down into the right ventricle. The chamber feels deeper, more muscular, the floor beneath you warm and alive. For a moment all is still, then a sudden tightening, like a hug you didn't expect, and you're propelled upward into the pulmonary artery, the first leg of your journey. Through the widening vessel you float toward the lungs. The blood around you grows lighter, more hopeful. You can sense you're getting close. Soon the artery branches and branches again, dividing into finer passages. The walls grow thinner, the pulse slows. Finally you slip into a capillary, a vessel so narrow you must fold yourself slightly to pass through. Here, at last, the exchange begins. Oxygen from the air sac seeps across the delicate membrane and binds to the hemoglobin inside you. The carbon dioxide you've carried loosens and drifts away, dissolving into the plasma to be exhaled. It happens without fuss or fanfare. A quiet transaction older than memory. You feel lighter now, brighter, as if you've just taken a long breath after holding it too long. Emerging from the capillary, you join thousands of other red blood cells, all fresh with oxygen. Together you flow into the pulmonary veins, those rare veins that carry bright, oxygen-rich blood, and ride their gentle current into the left atrium. It's peaceful here. A pause before purpose resumes. Then, once more, the chamber contracts. You slip through the mitral valve into the left ventricle, the strongest chamber of all. The walls rise around you like cliffs, thick and determined. You barely have time to consider your surroundings before the muscles flex in a single unified contraction. A rush, swift, certain, and you are propelled through the aortic valve into the aorta, that broad, curving arch. For a moment, you are part of a powerful wave surging toward every corner of the body. The flow divides, branching into arteries large and small. As you drift downstream, the current softens, slowing your journey as vessels narrow. Finally, you arrive in a capillary near the surface of the skin on someone's fingertip. Perhaps, even now, they're resting a hand gently on their chest, feeling the pulse you helped create. Here, your work begins again. You release your oxygen to the waiting cells, trading it for their carbon dioxide. Once more, you feel heavy and ready for the return trip. In tiny, measured steps, you flow into small veins, then larger ones, each tributary joining another until you merge into the superior vena cava, a great river carrying you back to the heart. It's a cycle you will repeat over and over. No need to think, no need to wonder. Just this silent, steady journey. A voyage so essential that every moment of life depends upon it. So as you rest tonight, imagine Ruby and all her fellow travellers gliding through you in quiet procession. Thousands of little couriers carrying life to every cell and returning home to begin again. Now that you've travelled alongside Ruby, our faithful red blood cell, let's slow our focus to the place where the most delicate exchanges happen, the capillaries. Imagine all the grand highways of your body, the broad rivers of arteries and veins branching and narrowing until they become tiny, almost invisible threads. These are the capillaries, the smallest blood vessels so narrow that red blood cells must sometimes fold themselves to squeeze through. Capillaries are the meeting places, the thresholds between the blood and every tissue it serves. Each one is lined with walls only a single cell thick, thin enough that oxygen and nutrients can pass through, yet strong enough to keep the blood contained. Picture them like tiny bridges across a stream, but instead of water flowing underneath, the exchange happens right across the walls themselves. Oxygen drifts from the blood into the surrounding cells. Glucose, amino acids and hormones follow, slipping across in silent, constant movement. At the same time, waste products, carbon dioxide, urea and other byproducts of life, move the other way, leaving the tissues and dissolving into the plasma for removal. You can think of capillaries as the smallest delivery rooms in your body. Here, the packages are dropped off and the outgoing parcels are picked up. The work is so continuous, so seamless, that you'd never sense it happening, even if you could see it. The network is vast beyond imagining. If you were to lay out all your capillaries end to end, they would stretch for about 60,000 miles, enough to wrap around the Earth more than twice. In that endless lace of vessels, every cell you've ever had is never more than a hair's breadth away from a capillary. The speed of flow here is slower than anywhere else in the circulatory system. That's by design. The heart sends out blood in pulses, fast, determined surges, but when that current arrives at the capillaries it slows to a gentle crawl. Like a rushing river spreading into a still pond, the pressure eases, giving time for each molecule to find its place. As you breathe, oxygen saturates the hemoglobin in your red blood cells, travelling to the capillaries where it slips across the barrier and binds to the cells that need it most. In the muscles of your legs, in the tissue of your liver, in the neurons that let you dream and remember, everywhere this quiet transaction repeats itself. When your body is at rest, not all capillaries are open. The smallest arteries, arterioles, have tiny muscles that constrict or relax to direct flow where it's needed. When you exercise, more capillaries open to supply oxygen to your working muscles. When you're warm, they widen to help release heat. And when you're cold, they narrow again, conserving warmth for your core. Some capillaries are specialised for unique tasks. In the kidneys, they filter waste and excess fluid into urine. In the small intestine, they absorb nutrients from your meals. In the lungs, they exchange gases with each breath. Even in your skin, a delicate web of capillaries supports healing. If you nick your finger slicing bread, these tiny vessels are the first to respond, their walls sealing quickly as platelets gather to stop the bleeding. All this work happens in silence. The capillaries don't pump or pulse. They simply receive what the heart delivers, and in return they release what the body requires. They are the smallest vessels, but in many ways the most essential. So tonight, as you feel the steady warmth of your own body, remember the millions of capillaries beneath your skin, a network as vast as any forest, exchanging life one molecule at a time. We've traced the path of oxygen-rich blood leaving the heart, winding through arteries and capillaries, nourishing every corner of the body. But every journey needs a return, and tonight we'll follow that quiet homecoming through the veins. If arteries are the swift, bold couriers delivering life, veins are the gentle collectors, gathering spent blood and carrying it back to the heart. Their work is no less important, though it happens more softly, more slowly, in the quieter currents of your circulation. Imagine, if you like, the veins as the body's many small streams merging into broad, calm rivers. Unlike arteries, veins carry blood that has given away its oxygen. What returns is darker, tinged with carbon dioxide and other wastes waiting to be refreshed. Because the heart's push is strongest in the arteries, by the time blood reaches the veins, its momentum has faded. Here, other forces help it continue. In your legs, especially, gravity can be a stubborn adversary, tugging blood downward each time you stand. To keep the flow moving up toward your heart, your veins rely on 3 small miracles of design. The first is the presence of tiny, one-way valves. Picture them like delicate flaps of silk, hinged against the walls of the veins. When blood moves upward, the valves flatten against the walls, allowing an easy passage. But if blood begins to slip backward, the valves swing shut, catching it and holding it in place. With each beat, with every step, the blood is nudged a little farther toward home, never losing ground. The second helper is muscle. Each time you flex your calf, or rise to stand, or shift in your sleep, the muscles around your veins contract gently, squeezing them like a soft pump. This action, called the muscle pump, pushes blood through the valves, a quiet cooperation between movement and circulation. Even the smallest fidget sends a ripple through your veins, propelling blood upward. And finally, there is the subtle rhythm of breathing. When you inhale, the pressure in your chest lowers slightly, creating a gentle suction that helps draw blood from the veins back to the heart. With each breath, a little more returns, an unbroken cycle that continues as long as you live. The veins themselves are different from arteries in other ways. Their walls are thinner and more flexible, designed to hold larger volumes of blood at lower pressure. In fact, nearly 2/3 of your blood is in your veins at any moment, a reserve waiting to be called upon if you need it. Along the way, the veins gather into larger and larger trunks. In the legs, the small veins merge into the saphenous veins, winding along the length of your limbs. In your abdomen, the renal veins drain your kidneys, while the hepatic veins collect blood from the liver. Higher up, veins collect the oxygen-poor blood from your arms and head. All these rivers converge into 2 vast channels, the inferior vena cava and the superior vena cava. The inferior vena cava is the largest vein in your body, a quiet giant that rises up along your spine, gathering blood from the legs, pelvis and abdomen. The superior vena cava, smaller but no less important, collects everything from above your heart, your head, neck and arms. Finally, these 2 veins empty into the right atrium where the journey begins again. In the space of a single breath, blood that had visited your toes now waits to be sent to your lungs for renewal. And so, each beat is a cycle, a beginning, a journey, a return. 1,000 small acts of delivery and collection, repeating in perfect time. Tonight, as you feel your chest rise and fall, know that in the quiet dark your veins are working patiently, gently guiding each drop of blood home. As we follow the return of blood through your veins, let's pause for a moment to notice the signals your body offers in plain sight, your pulse and your blood pressure. These 2 quiet clues, one that you can feel and one that doctors measure, tell the story of how your heart and vessels work together to keep you alive. Imagine the pulse as the echo of each heartbeat. When your left ventricle contracts, it sends a wave of pressure through the aorta into your arteries and outward to every corner of your body. That wave travels fast, faster than the blood itself, rippling down each artery, expanding the walls ever so slightly before they spring back. If you rest 2 fingers gently against the side of your neck or the soft hollow of your wrist, you can feel this rhythm. Each thump is a silent herald, a small proof that your heart is working just as it should. Your pulse tells you more than simply that you're alive. It holds clues about your body's state in each moment. When you're calm, resting in bed or sitting quietly, your pulse is slow and steady, perhaps around 60 to 70 beats per minute. When you exercise, when you feel startled, or even when you laugh, your heart responds, beating faster, sending more blood where it's needed. It is a beautifully responsive system, adjusting to whatever life asks of you. Blood pressure, on the other hand, measures the force with which your blood presses against the walls of your arteries. Each heartbeat generates this pressure, pushing oxygen-rich blood outward with every contraction. Doctors often describe blood pressure as two numbers, systolic over diastolic. The systolic pressure is the higher number, the surge created when the left ventricle contracts and sends blood into the arteries. The diastolic pressure is the lower number, measured as the heart relaxes and the chambers refill. You can imagine it like waves washing onto a shore, first the crest, then the retreat, in a perfect repeating pattern. A healthy adult's blood pressure is typically around 120 over 80 millimeters of mercury. But these numbers too can shift. They rise when you stand up quickly, when you feel anxious, or when you've been active. They fall as you rest, as you sleep, as your body eases into stillness. In your arteries, elastic walls help absorb the pressure of each beat, expanding to accommodate the surge and relaxing again between pulses. Over time, these walls can stiffen, which is why maintaining their health is so important. Regular movement, nourishing foods, and restful sleep all help keep your vessels supple and strong. Many people don't think much about their blood pressure until a doctor wraps the cuff around their upper arm. Yet inside you, it's being regulated every moment by a finely tuned network of sensors. Tiny baroreceptors, nerve endings hidden in the walls of your major arteries, constantly measure the pressure and send signals to your brain. If the pressure rises, your brain instructs your vessels to relax and your heart to slow. If it drops, the vessels tighten and the heart speeds up. It's a quiet choreography that never stops, never needs your permission. If you'd like, you can take a moment to find your own pulse again. Rest your fingertips gently on your wrist or over the side of your neck. Feel that quiet rhythm, the wave of life cresting and falling beneath your skin. It is the simplest evidence of all that your heart and vessels are doing their work moment by moment. And tonight, as you drift into rest, that steady beat and gentle pressure will continue, faithful as a tide, soft as a lullaby. After spending time exploring the heart's rhythm and the quiet pressure that fills your arteries, let's turn to something you do every day, often without thinking, a simple movement that supports everything your circulation accomplishes. You might not consider the act of standing, stretching, or even shifting in your seat to be particularly remarkable, but these small motions are part of the reason your heart and blood vessels can do their work so gracefully. Imagine your body as a tall building with many floors. Your heart, a steady pump on the middle level, must deliver supplies to every story, especially those far below, in your feet and legs. Gravity pulls on your blood, urging it to pool in the lowest places. If you stood perfectly still for hours, your circulation would slow, your feet would swell, and you'd start to feel dizzy. But your body has an elegant solution: movement itself. Each time you walk, your muscles contract and release in a quiet rhythm. With every step, your calf muscles squeeze the veins in your legs like gentle pumps, pressing blood upward through the one-way valves. This action is called the skeletal muscle pump. You could think of it as a team of helpful hands nudging each drop of blood a little closer to home. Even the tiniest shift in posture, a flex of your ankle, a bend of your knee, sends a ripple through the veins, keeping the flow moving smoothly. This is why standing up and taking a few steps can ease the feeling of heaviness after sitting still for too long. Your breathing plays a part too. When you inhale, your diaphragm lowers and the pressure in your chest cavity decreases. This drop in pressure gently draws blood from the veins into your heart, a mechanism called the respiratory pump. Each breath you take becomes another small effort to keep your circulation balanced. This interplay between movement and circulation also explains why your heart rate changes when you exercise. When you walk briskly or climb a set of stairs, your muscles demand more oxygen. The tiny arterioles widen to let extra blood through. and your heart responds by beating faster. Your breathing deepens, drawing in more oxygen and helping carry away the carbon dioxide that working muscles produce. But even in stillness, your circulation doesn't stop. The heart continues its rhythm, the vessels adjust their tone, and the valves in your veins keep each wave of returning blood moving upward. It is only that movement makes everything easier, smoother, like clearing a path so the current can flow freely. That is why gentle, regular motion, a walk in the morning light, a few stretches before bed, is so helpful. These quiet acts support the balance your heart works so hard to maintain. As you settle in, tonight you may find yourself shifting once or twice before you grow still. Even that small motion is enough to stir the currents, to keep your blood flowing just as it should. So when you think about caring for your heart, know that you don't always need grand gestures or perfect routines. Sometimes the simplest thing, a step, a stretch, a deep breath, is the most powerful way to say thank you to the body that carries you. And when you grow still at last, your heart will keep moving for you, steady, faithful, and glad to have the help when you offer it. As we leave the pathways of circulating blood behind, let's turn our attention to the silent signals that keep every heartbeat in order. Because if the heart is a pump, it is also something more, an instrument that plays its own music, guided by tiny electrical impulses that never wait for instruction. This remarkable property is called autorhythmicity. It means the heart has a rhythm that begins within itself. Even if you separated it from the body and kept it supplied with oxygen and nutrients, it would go on beating for a while, keeping time without a conductor. Imagine a row of lanterns, each with its own tiny flame, passing light from one to the next in perfect sequence. That is how your heart creates and spreads the impulses that trigger each contraction. At the center of this quiet choreography are specialized cells, unlike any other in your body. These autorhythmic cells, also called pacemaker cells, live primarily in two places, the sinoatrial node and the atrioventricular node. But their special properties extend throughout the heart's electrical network. What makes them unique is the way they handle ions, tiny charged particles like sodium, potassium and calcium. In most cells, the flow of ions happens only when they're stimulated by a signal. But in autorhythmic cells, ions drift across their membranes spontaneously. Over and over, the gradual influx of sodium ions makes the inside of each cell less negative until it reaches a threshold. When that moment arrives, calcium rushes in, creating an action potential, a brief spark of electricity. This impulse doesn't stay in one place. It spreads rapidly across neighbouring cells, carried by the intercalated discs, the little connections that link heart cells like the stitching in a quilt. Each time this wave of depolarization travels through the muscle, it triggers contraction. Then, just as swiftly, potassium ions flow out, resetting the cell's charge. The process begins again, without pause or deliberation. If you could watch this unfold in real time, you'd see a shimmer of activity beginning in one spot and sweeping across the heart like a tide coming in. It is a rhythm older than memory, older even than the first moments of your life. By the time you were 6 weeks old in your mother's womb, these electrical currents had already begun their work. Unlike the muscles in your arms or legs, which wait patiently for your brain to tell them to act, the heart is independent. Your nervous system can adjust its speed, raising the rate when you're frightened, lowering it when you're at rest, but it cannot start or stop the heartbeat itself. That spark belongs to the heart alone. In this way, your heart is both servant and sovereign. It answers the needs of the body, beating faster when you run, slower when you sleep, but it does so by rules it wrote itself. As you lie here tonight, perhaps listening to the gentle hush of your own breath, remember that this quiet rhythm is yours, and yours alone. No other heart has ever beaten in precisely the same cadence. No other set of cells has ever played exactly this song. It is a music that will continue, one beat after another, through every moment of your life. Now that we've explored how autorhythmicity gives the heart its independence, let's meet the small patch of tissue that sets the pace for everything, the sinoatrial node, or synode. If you imagine your heart as a symphony, the synode is the quiet conductor who lifts a baton and begins the music. It is a cluster of specialised pacemaker cells, no bigger than a postage stamp, tucked into the upper wall of your right atrium near where the superior vena cava enters the heart. From this modest perch, the SA node generates electrical impulses about 60 to 100 times per minute in a healthy resting adult. Each impulse is a spark, a note in the melody of your life, telling your heart when to contract and when to rest. What makes the SA node unique is how its cells manage their internal charge. Inside each pacemaker cell, sodium and calcium ions slowly leak across the membrane. This leakage is deliberate, built into their design. As the ions drift inward, the electrical charge of the cell gradually becomes less negative until a threshold is reached. Then, like a switch flipping, the cell rapidly depolarizes. This depolarization spreads instantly to the neighbouring cells in the node, and together they release a wave of electricity that travels across the atrial walls. The impulse moves through the intercalated discs, those tiny electrical bridges, and causes the atria to contract. This contraction is gentle but essential. It fills the ventricles with the last bit of blood before the stronger squeeze begins below. You could think of the atria as topping off the chambers, ensuring the ventricles have everything they need to deliver a full heartbeat. From the atria, the electrical signal does not travel straight into the ventricles. Instead, it pauses briefly at another node, the atrioventricular node, or AV node, which we will explore in our next session. This pause is important. Without it, the ventricles and atria would contract at the same time, fighting each other rather than working in sequence. The SA node isn't just a simple metronome. It responds to messages from the autonomic nervous system, the network of nerves that manages unconscious processes. When you're calm and relaxed, the parasympathetic system releases acetylcholine, slowing the SA node's firing rate. Your pulse drops, your breathing eases, and your body settles into rest. But if you feel frightened or excited, the sympathetic nervous system releases norepinephrine and other signals, making the SA node fire more quickly. Your heart rate climbs, your muscles prime for action, and your mind sharpens in readiness. This responsiveness makes the SA node a remarkable balance of independence and cooperation. It keeps its own rhythm, but listens carefully to the body's needs, adjusting without complaint. If you have ever felt your heart quicken when you stand up too quickly, or slow as you drift towards sleep, you've felt the SA node at work, an unassuming patch of cells that has been faithfully setting your heartbeat since you were an embryo, smaller than a grain of rice. Even now, as you lie in stillness, your SA node continues its quiet counting. It doesn't ask for thanks or attention. It simply lifts its baton over and over, and the heart responds. From the SA node's quiet leadership, the electrical signal travels in an elegant ripple across the atria, telling them to contract and send blood into the ventricles. But before the impulse can pass any farther, it encounters a deliberate moment of stillness, a small, crucial pause in the rhythm. This is the work of the atrioventricular node, or AV node, a tiny cluster of cells nestled in the lower part of the right atrium, near the dividing wall called the septum. While the SA node is the heart's initiator, the AV node is the timekeeper, the one who ensures each beat unfolds in perfect sequence. Imagine a relay race. The SA node is the first runner, swift and eager, handing the baton forward. But the AV node waits just a fraction longer, making sure the next runner is ready. This pause lasts only about 1/10 of a second, just enough time for the ventricles to fill completely before they contract. The mechanism behind this delay is beautiful in its simplicity. The cells of the AV node conduct electrical impulses more slowly than those of the surrounding tissue. As the signal reaches them, it travels carefully, almost cautiously, before continuing its journey. In this small hesitation, your heart finds its rhythm. Without the AV node's measured timing, the atria and ventricles could contract simultaneously. The result would be inefficient, like two people trying to pour water into and out of the same cup at once. Blood flow would falter, the chambers would strain against each other. But thanks to this pause, the heart's movement remains orderly and complete. Once the delay has served its purpose, the AV node passes the impulse into the next part of the conduction system, the bundle of His. From there, the signal divides and spreads swiftly into the ventricles, prompting them to contract with force. The AV node also has another, quieter role as a backup pacemaker. If the SA node falters or stops, the AV node can take over, generating impulses on its own, though at a slower pace, usually about 40 to 60 beats per minute. In this way, it is both partner and safety net, ready to keep the heart beating if the usual rhythm is lost. You might never feel this pause as you rest here tonight, but it is present in every beat. A moment of stillness before movement resumes, a breath held before the next note begins. If you've ever watched a conductor raise a hand to cue the orchestra, or seen a dancer poised for the next step, you've glimpsed the same delicate timing. The AV node is your heart's measure of patience, ensuring that each contraction happens not just powerfully, but precisely. So as you lie in the hush of your evening, remember this. Within the small architecture of your chest, there is a pause that makes everything possible. A quiet interval that holds the heartbeat steady and the circulation sure. Once the AV node has performed its careful pause, the heartbeat's electrical signal is ready to continue. What follows is one of the most elegant pathways in the body, a branching highway that carries the impulse into the deepest muscle of your heart, so every cell contracts in harmony. The next part of this journey begins in the bundle of His, sometimes called the atrioventricular bundle, named after the Swiss cardiologist Wilhelm Jr., who described it in the 19th century. This bundle is a slender cord of specialized fibers. You can imagine it as a bridge between the atria and the ventricles, spanning the divide of the septum. When the electrical impulse leaves the AV node, it enters the bundle of His, which quickly divides into two separate pathways, the right bundle branch and the left bundle branch. These two branches run down either side of the interventricular septum, the thick muscular wall between the heart's two lower chambers. Here, the signal travels faster than it did through the AV node. The pause has ended, and the moment for action has arrived. The bundle branches act like broad avenues, conducting the impulse swiftly toward the apex, the pointed tip of your heart. From there, the signal doesn't stop. The branches give rise to a delicate web of fibers called the Purkinje fibers, named after the Czech physiologist Jan Evangelista Purkin, who first observed them under a microscope. These fibers weave through the walls of the ventricles like fine threads in a tapestry, spreading the electrical current to every corner of the muscular chambers. It is this network that ensures the ventricles contract from the bottom upward. If you picture squeezing toothpaste from the end of the tube, you'll see the wisdom of this design. By contracting from the apex toward the base, the ventricles push blood upward, out through the pulmonary valve to the lungs on the right side, and out through the aortic valve to the body on the left. If the contraction began at the top, much of the blood would be trapped and the heart's work would be less efficient. But thanks to the timing and direction of the Purkinje fibers' activation, each heartbeat is smooth, powerful, and complete. The Purkinje fibers conduct impulses incredibly quickly, about 6 times faster than the muscle cells themselves. This speed matters. It allows the entire mass of ventricular muscle to contract as one, creating the strong, coordinated squeeze that propels blood through your arteries. You might imagine the bundle of His and Purkinje fibers as an elaborate lighting system. with a single switch in the AV node that sends a cascade of illumination along each corridor. Within a fraction of a second, every lamp glows together, no corner left in darkness. This hidden architecture is part of why your heartbeat feels so effortless. You do not sense the pathways or the electrical waves. You simply feel the soft thud beneath your ribs, the pulse in your wrist, the gentle reassurance that your body's quiet current continues. Tonight, as you rest, each beat is guided by this network, an unseen lattice of precision and timing that has worked flawlessly since before you were born. And so, the bundle of his and the Purkinje fibers stand as the final relay in your heart's electrical journey, the moment where intention becomes action, where the whisper of an impulse becomes the surge of life itself. Now that you've followed the signal from the SA node to the Purkinje fibers, let's step closer, down to the level of each cell, and discover the quiet chemistry that powers every spark. This is the world of ions and action potentials, where tiny charged particles drift across invisible boundaries and create the electricity that keeps you alive. Each heart cell, whether in the SA node, the atrial walls, or the ventricles, carries a delicate balance of ions. Sodium, potassium, and calcium move in and out of the cell through gates called ion channels. These channels are like tiny doors, opening and closing at just the right moment. When a cell is at rest, the inside carries a negative electrical charge compared to the outside. This resting potential is maintained by the careful work of pumps that shuttle sodium out and potassium in. Imagine two children passing marbles back and forth, always keeping their collections in balance. When the time comes for a cell to activate, the process begins with a gentle drift. Sodium ions start to leak inward. As they accumulate, the cell's interior becomes less negative, like a tide rising slowly. Once it reaches a certain threshold, the doors swing wide. Sodium floods in rapidly, flipping the inside of the cell from negative to positive in a fraction of a second. This change in charge is called depolarization. The depolarization spreads like a ripple to neighbouring cells, carried through the intercalated discs. This is the action potential, a momentary spark that tells the muscle fibres it's time to contract. But the process doesn't end there. As sodium channels close, calcium channels open, allowing calcium ions to flow into the cell. Calcium has a special role. It binds to the contractile machinery inside the muscle fibres, telling them to slide past each other and shorten. This is how an electrical signal becomes a mechanical squeeze. Finally, potassium channels open. Potassium flows out of the cell, restoring the negative charge inside, a process called repolarization. The cell returns to its resting state, ready for the next impulse. All of this happens in the blink of an eye. For a ventricular cell, the entire cycle lasts about 250 milliseconds. Hundreds of times every minute this dance repeats itself, never tiring. You could think of it as winding a clockwork toy after every tick, resetting the spring, preparing for the next movement. Calcium, in particular, is the essential messenger that turns electricity into motion. Without calcium, the wave of depolarization would be just a whisper. But with it, the muscle fibers know when to contract, and the heart knows how to beat. If you've ever seen an electrocardiogram, those graceful waves rising and falling across a screen, you've watched the collective action potentials of thousands of cells. Each peak and valley reflects the sum of these tiny events. Sodium rushing in, calcium triggering contraction, potassium restoring calm. It is a choreography so precise that it has kept you alive since before you could draw your first breath. As you rest here tonight, you do not need to think about these ions or their endless movement. They will continue without instruction or thanks, a quiet testament to the heart's patient intelligence. And so, each beat is not only a mechanical event, but an electrical one, a delicate current of life that begins with the tiniest particles crossing an unseen threshold. As you've seen, the heart's electrical system is astonishing in its precision. But like any complex mechanism, sometimes the rhythm can falter. These moments, when the usual order is disrupted, are called arrhythmias. The word arrhythmia simply means without rhythm, though in truth, it often means a heartbeat that is too fast, too slow, or irregular. Some arrhythmias are harmless, brief, fluttering episodes you might never notice. Others can be more serious, affecting how well the heart pumps blood. Imagine a drummer in an orchestra. Most of the time the drum beat is steady and sure, but sometimes the drummer might tap too quickly, pause too long, or strike out of time. The melody continues, but the underlying rhythm becomes uneven. That is what an arrhythmia feels like. One of the most common examples is atrial fibrillation, sometimes called AFB. In this condition, the atria quiver instead of contracting smoothly. Their electrical impulses become disorganized, like a crowd all shouting at once. Instead of a clear signal passing through the AV node, there is a storm of activity causing the ventricles to beat irregularly. This can lead to a fluttering sensation in the chest or a feeling that the heart has skipped a beat. Other arrhythmias are simpler. Premature ventricular contractions, or PVCs, are extra beats that begin in the ventricles. You might feel these as a strong thump or a momentary pause before the normal rhythm resumes. They are common and often harmless. Sometimes, however, the heart's rhythm becomes dangerously fast, as in ventricular tachycardia. In this state, the ventricles beat so rapidly they don't have time to fill with blood between contractions. If this continues unchecked, it can lead to ventricular fibrillation, a chaotic, ineffective twitching that stops circulation altogether. When the natural pacemakers like the say node fail, or when the pathways are damaged, the heart may need help. This is where artificial pacemakers come in. These small devices, usually implanted under the skin near the collarbone, send electrical impulses to keep the heart beating in a steady rhythm. The pacemaker consists of a battery and a computer chip, connected to wires called leads that carry signals directly into the heart muscle. It monitors the heartbeat moment by moment, stepping in only when needed. Some pacemakers fire continuously at a set rate. Others are more adaptive, waiting quietly and offering a prompt only if the heart falls behind. If you've ever seen someone with a small scar below their collarbone and felt curiosity about it, you are looking at evidence of this gentle support, a technology that restores the heart's music when it stumbles. Even in cases where the rhythm is simply too fast, there are treatments. Medications can slow conduction, giving the heart time to recover. Some people receive implantable cardioverter defibrillators, devices that watch for dangerous arrhythmias and deliver a life-saving shock if needed. And for many, arrhythmias are managed with no intervention at all. The heart, given time and care, often finds its rhythm again. So as you lie here, listening to your own pulse, know that small irregularities are common. A missed beat, an extra thump. These are often just reminders of your heart's responsiveness. They show that your heart is alive, dynamic, and capable of adapting to every moment. And should the rhythm ever falter beyond what it can repair alone, there are ways, quiet, precise, and compassionate, to help it find its steady song again. Now that we've journeyed through the heart's electrical pathways, let's return to something simpler, something you can hear and feel, the cycle of contraction and relaxation that creates each heartbeat. This cycle has two main phases, systole and diastole, and together they create the rhythm that sustains your life. Systole is the moment of action. It begins when the electrical impulse travels down through the Purkinje fibers, telling the ventricles it is time to contract. As the muscle fibers shorten, pressure rises inside the ventricles. When the pressure surpasses that in the arteries beyond the valves, the aortic and pulmonary valves swing open and blood surges outward. You can imagine this phase as a deep exhale, a release of stored energy. It is the powerful push that propels blood to your lungs and your body. Systole doesn't last long, just a fraction of a second. But in that moment, your blood travels further than in any other part of the cycle. The force of this contraction creates the higher number in your blood pressure reading, the systolic pressure. After this surge comes a pause, a space for recovery. That is diastole. During diastole, the ventricles relax. Pressure within them falls. The aortic and pulmonary valves close with a gentle snap, preventing blood from flowing backward. Meanwhile, the mitral and tricuspid valves open and blood streams in from the atria. If systole is the exhale, diastole is the inhale. The heart fills itself patiently, preparing for the next contraction. This phase lasts longer than systole, giving the chambers time to refill and the muscle time to rest. The lower number in your blood pressure, the diastolic pressure, reflects the pressure in your arteries when the heart is at rest. Together, systole and diastole create a continuous cycle, contract, relax, like the slow, rhythmic rocking of a boat on gentle waves. Every part of your body depends on this movement. When you stand, when you laugh, when you dream, your heart keeps this rhythm, sometimes faster, when you climb a hill or feel sudden joy, sometimes slower, when you drift towards sleep, as you may be doing now. One way to imagine this is to picture a pair of cupped hands. In systole, they squeeze together, pressing water out. In diastole, they open, filling again. Over and over, this motion repeats, unhurried, dependable. This cycle can be heard with a stethoscope. The first sound, the lub, marks the start of systole as the mitral and tricuspid valves close. The second sound, the dub, marks the start of diastole when the aortic and pulmonary valves shut. Between these sounds, the heart is either pushing blood into your arteries or drawing it back in for the next beat. It never truly stops. Even in your deepest sleep, the cycle continues, carrying oxygen to every cell. As you lie here tonight, consider how much is contained in these two simple phases. In each heartbeat, a story of movement and rest, of giving and receiving, unfolds beneath your ribs. It is a rhythm older than your first memory, and it will continue as long as you live. Having felt the steady alternation of systole and diastole, let's listen more closely to the sounds they produce, the soft percussion that marks each cycle of the heart. You've likely heard these sounds in a doctor's office or in a film. Lub-dub, lub-dub. These two simple syllables carry the story of your heart's valves, opening and closing in perfect time. The first sound, the lub, is called the first heart sound, Chorus 1. It begins when systole begins, when the ventricles prepare to contract. As pressure in the ventricles rises, the mitral and tricuspid valves slam shut. They have to seal firmly to keep blood from slipping backward into the atria. That closure creates a low resonant vibration. The lub you can hear through a stethoscope pressed against the chest. The second sound, the dub, is the second heart sound, Chorus 2. It comes at the end of systole, when the ventricles have finished their contraction and pressure begins to fall. At that moment, the aortic and pulmonary valves close to keep blood from returning into the heart. This closure is shorter, sharper, like a quick clap following the deeper thud of the lub. These two sounds, together no more than half a second, are the most direct evidence of the heart's constant work. You could think of them as the punctuation marks of circulation, the commas and periods in the sentence of each heartbeat. If you listen carefully, you might even detect slight variations. When you inhale, your dub can split into two closely spaced sounds. This is called physiological splitting. It happens because inhalation lowers pressure in the chest, causing the pulmonary valve to close just after the aortic valve. It is harmless, a small reminder of how the heart responds to every breath you take. Some people have extra heart sounds. A third sound, S3, occurs just after the dub as blood rushes into the ventricles during early diastole. In children and young adults, this can be normal, a sign of healthy, flexible heart muscle. In older adults, it can sometimes indicate fluid overload or heart failure. A fourth sound, S4, comes just before the lub, when the atria contract to top off the ventricles. Like S3, it is often a clue for physicians, a small detail in the music of the heartbeat that hints at the heart's condition. But for most people, only the lub-dub is audible, repeating, steady, familiar. If you lie very still and press your ear against someone's chest, you can hear it for yourself, a soft, reassuring reminder that life continues with every beat. You could think of these sounds as the heart's lullaby, playing on without pause. No matter how loud the world becomes, no matter how far your thoughts wander, this rhythm remains, quietly marking time. As you rest tonight, consider that each lub-dub represents a complete cycle of filling and emptying, of sending oxygen to every cell and gathering it back again, and you don't have to do anything to keep it going. It is a gift your body gives you, freely, tirelessly, again and again. You've now felt the heartbeat cycle, heard its sounds, and pictured its chambers working together. But the heart's rhythm is never rigid. It changes, softly, responsively, to match every moment of your life. Think of your heart rate as a living tempo, a measure of how your body meets the world. When you rest, it slows, calm, unhurried. When you move or feel strong emotion, it quickens, steady, ready. At rest, most adults have a heart rate between 60 and 100 beats per minute. This gentle pulse is called your resting heart rate. For athletes and those who exercise regularly, it can be lower, sometimes as low as 40 beats per minute. Each slow beat is a testament to efficiency, a heart trained to deliver blood with less effort. When you stand up in the morning, gravity pulls blood into your legs. Sensing this, small receptors in your arteries send a signal to your brain. The pressure has dropped. In response, your heart speeds up slightly to maintain steady circulation. This happens in an instant, long before you notice. If you've ever felt your pulse race after a sudden fright, a slammed door, a startling noise, that too is your heart responding. The sympathetic nervous system, part of the body's automatic regulator, floods your bloodstream with adrenaline. Your SA node fires faster. The vessels tighten. Your pulse quickens, readying you to flee or defend. This response is called the fight or flight reaction. Though most of us rarely need to outrun danger, the system remains, a biological inheritance from ancestors who did. But just as your heart rate can rise, it can also fall. When you sit quietly or lie down, the parasympathetic nervous system releases acetylcholine, a calming chemical. Your SA node slows, the beat softens, your breathing eases. This is sometimes called the rest and digest state, a return to calm after excitement. Even the simple act of breathing affects your heart rate. When you inhale, your heart speeds up by a few beats. When you exhale, it slows again. This phenomenon, called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, is entirely normal, a reflection of the close partnership between lungs and heart. During sleep, your heart rate reaches its slowest rhythm. In deep restorative rest, the beat can fall by 10 to 20 beats per minute. This is your body's chance to recover, to reset, to prepare for the coming day. There are times when your heart speeds up without obvious cause. Perhaps you feel it flutter while you rest, an extra beat or two. These premature contractions are common. For most people, they are harmless, simply another way the heart reveals its responsiveness. At other times, your heart might seem to beat too slowly, a pause that feels like a held breath. As long as you feel well, this too can be normal, especially during sleep or relaxation. If you like, you can rest your fingers on your wrist again now, feeling the gentle thud. Notice how it responds to your breath, to your thoughts, even to the simple act of paying attention. This flexibility is part of what makes the heart extraordinary. It is not a machine, but a living learning muscle, quietly adapting to everything you experience. And so tonight, as you listen to the hush of your own pulse, remember that each change in tempo is a gift, proof that your heart is alive to every moment, ready to rise and ready to rest. If you've ever been in a clinic or watched a medical drama, you've likely seen an electrocardiogram, the wavy lines marching across a screen, peaks rising and falling in quiet succession. The electrocardiogram, or ECG, is one of the simplest, most powerful tools we have for understanding the heart's rhythm. It's a recording of your heart's electrical activity, measured from the surface of your skin. Imagine placing microphones around a concert hall. You might not see the orchestra, but you would hear their music, know when the trumpets begin or the violins fall silent. The ECG works in the same way. It captures the electrical song of the heart and translates it into a pattern we can read. Each heartbeat produces a series of electrical changes. When the SA node fires, the atria depolarize, creating the first wave on the ECG, a small rounded bump called the P wave. This wave marks the moment your atria contract, pushing blood into the ventricles. After a brief pause at the AV node, the electrical signal travels through the bundle of His and the Purkinje fibres. This rapid depolarization of the ventricles produces the next, much larger spike, the QRS complex. You could think of it as the main drumbeat of the heart, the strong surge that drives blood into the arteries. Finally, as the ventricles reset, repolarizing in preparation for the next beat, the ECG shows the T wave, a gentle rise and fall that closes the cycle. Together, the P wave, QRS complex and T wave make up a single heartbeat on the ECG. If you look closely, you'll see the spaces between them, the intervals and segments that tell physicians how long each part of the cycle takes. Small changes here can hold important clues about how the heart is working. For example, if the time between the P wave and the QRS complex grows longer, it can mean the AV node is delaying too much. If the QRS complex widens, it can signal that the ventricles are not conducting electricity efficiently. Even the height and shape of the T wave can reveal hidden imbalances in the heart's chemistry. It is remarkable that such a simple test, electrodes placed gently on the skin, can uncover so much. During an ECG, you may be asked to lie still while a technician attaches small sticky pads to your chest, arms and legs. Wires connect the pads to the machine, which records the heart's activity for a few seconds to several minutes. In longer studies, like Holter monitoring, a portable device records your rhythm over 24 or 48 hours as you go about your daily life. This can reveal arrhythmias that don't appear during a short exam. If you've ever worn one of these monitors, you might remember the quiet awareness it brings, a reminder that your heart is always speaking, even when you aren't listening. And so, the ECG becomes a kind of window. It lets physicians watch the heart's electrical dance without ever opening the chest. Each line and wave is a signature, unique to you, shaped by your anatomy, your health, and your history. Tonight, as you rest, your heart's electrical signals continue their quiet pattern, unseen but certain. A private concert, playing the song of your life, one beat at a time. As we've wandered through the cycles and sounds of your own heart, you may have wondered, does every creature share this same steady rhythm? The answer is both yes and no. While all hearts follow the same principle, muscle contracting to push fluid through vessels, the pace and form of that rhythm vary as widely as the life that carries it. Imagine the heartbeat of a hummingbird. In the span of a single breath, its tiny heart beats more than a dozen times. When resting, a hummingbird's heart may tick along at 250 beats per minute. But in flight, hovering at a flower, wings a blur. It can climb past 1,200 beats per minute. That is 20 times faster than most humans. Compare this to the heartbeat of a blue whale, the largest animal on Earth. When a whale dives, its heart slows to just 2 or 3 beats per minute, massive deep thuds that send blood coursing through its enormous body. When the whale surfaces to breathe, the heart rate rises again, sometimes up to 30 beats per minute. It is astonishing to think that the same principles apply to creatures of such different scales. One heart no bigger than a grain of rice, another the size of a small car. Among mammals, heart rate generally follows a simple rule. The smaller the animal, the faster its heartbeat. A mouse may have a resting heart rate over 500 beats per minute, while an elephant's rests around 30. Birds, with their high energy demands, tend to have faster heart rates. Reptiles, whose metabolism is slower, have slower rhythms still. A resting tortoise may have a heart rate around 20 beats per minute. During hibernation, it can drop further, sometimes to just a few beats per minute, quiet flickers of life waiting for warmth to return. Even within the human family, heart rate is not fixed. Newborns often have resting heart rates near 120 to 160 beats per minute, slowing gradually as they grow. In old age, the rhythm softens further, sometimes slower, sometimes with pauses that reflect the long journey it has travelled. In all these creatures, though, the heartbeat remains a universal signature, the sound of circulation, the proof of life. Whether it echoes rapidly or drifts slowly, it sustains every cell, every breath, every motion. If you ever visit a veterinary clinic and listen to a pet's chest through a stethoscope, you'll hear this same music. Different tempo, same purpose. A cat's quick flutter, a dog's steady drum. Each heartbeat a story of adaptation and survival. Some species even have unusual variations. Giraffes, for example, have powerful hearts with exceptionally thick walls to create the pressure needed to lift blood up their long necks to the... Brain crocodiles have a special valve that allows them to direct blood away from the lungs when they dive underwater, conserving oxygen. Each of these variations reminds us that the heart, in all its forms, has been shaped by countless generations to meet the needs of each life. Tonight, as you lie here, your own heartbeat falls somewhere between the extremes. Neither the lightning flicker of a hummingbird nor the slow thunder of a whale. Just your rhythm, steady and sufficient, shaped by your life, your size, and the quiet intelligence of your cells. It is a humbling thought. Every creature carries this small, persistent drum. And though no two rhythms are exactly the same, each is essential, a music that has no beginning and no end. Up to this point, we've explored the heart's architecture, its rhythms, and its quiet, tireless work. Now, let's turn our gaze outward, toward the choices we make each day and how they shape the health of this remarkable organ. You might think of the heart as a sturdy machine, always ready to go, and in many ways it is astonishingly resilient. But like any mechanism, it responds to how we treat it, both in the moment and over a lifetime. Consider movement. Regular exercise is one of the simplest gifts you can offer your heart. When you walk briskly, swim, or dance, your muscles call for more oxygen, and your heart responds by pumping faster and more efficiently. Over time, this training strengthens the heart muscle itself, much like exercise tones the muscles in your legs or arms. A well-conditioned heart can pump more blood with each beat, meaning it doesn't need to work as hard to meet your body's demands. This is why athletes often have lower resting heart rates. Their hearts are simply more efficient engines. Then there is food. Every meal you eat sends nutrients, fats, and sugars into your bloodstream where they eventually touch the cells of your heart. Diets rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and healthy fats, like those found in olive oil and nuts, provide the building blocks for flexible arteries and strong heart tissue. Too much saturated fat, salt, or added sugar, on the other hand, can gradually stiffen the arteries or raise blood pressure. Over years, these changes can burden the heart, forcing it to work harder against resistance. Consider stress, too. When you feel anxious or overwhelmed, your body releases adrenaline and cortisol. These chemicals increase heart rate and blood pressure, part of the same fight-or-flight response that once protected our ancestors. Occasional stress is harmless, even useful. but chronic stress, day after day, keeps your heart in a heightened state, like a motor idling too high, burning fuel it doesn't need to spend. This is why gentle practices, taking walks, breathing deeply, talking to someone you trust, are more than luxuries. They are small, protective rituals that help your heart return to a steady, calm rhythm. Sleep, often overlooked, is another pillar of heart health. During deep sleep, your heart rate falls, your blood pressure drops, and your body repairs itself. Over time, chronic sleep deprivation increases the risk of high blood pressure, arrhythmias, and other cardiovascular challenges. Even laughter has its place. When you laugh, blood vessels expand, circulation improves, and stress hormones dip. A heart, it seems, thrives on warmth and connection, as much as on good nutrition or exercise. You don't have to make perfect choices every day. The heart is forgiving. It will beat for you whether you spend an afternoon outside or an evening on the couch. But over months and years, the small decisions accumulate. Like drops of water shaping a stone, they carve pathways of health or struggle. Tonight, as you rest, know that caring for your heart does not require grand resolutions. It can begin with something as simple as a walk tomorrow morning, a meal shared in good company, or a moment of quiet before sleep. And remember, your heart has always been your companion. It asks only for a little care in return, a steady kindness toward the body that carries you. While your heart is resilient and adaptable, there are times when the quiet balance it maintains begins to fray. When this happens over months or years, it can lead to heart disease, a broad term that describes many ways the heart and vessels can struggle. Imagine, if you will, a network of roads, each is designed to carry a steady flow of traffic, smooth and predictable. Over time, if debris builds up or the pavement cracks, traffic slows. The same is true in your arteries. One of the most common challenges is atherosclerosis. This is the gradual accumulation of fatty deposits, called plaques, along the inner walls of the arteries. These plaques are made of cholesterol, calcium and cellular debris, like layers of silt slowly narrowing a stream. As the space within the arteries shrinks, the heart must pump harder to push blood through. If a plaque becomes unstable, it can rupture. The body, sensing injury, sends platelets to form a clot. Sometimes this clot can block the artery entirely, cutting off the supply of oxygen-rich blood to part of the heart muscle. This is a heart attack, or myocardial infarction. During a heart attack, the affected muscle cells begin to weaken and, if deprived of oxygen for too long, die. The longer the blockage remains, the greater the damage. This is why early care, restoring the flow as quickly as possible, can be life-saving. Other forms of heart disease don't involve blockages, but rather the weakening of the heart's pumping ability itself. In heart failure, for example, the muscle loses strength over time. It can't keep up with the body's needs, and fluid may begin to collect in the lungs or legs. Despite the name, heart failure doesn't mean the heart has stopped. It means it can no longer pump efficiently. Valve disorders can also strain the heart. If a valve leaks, regurgitation, or narrows, stenosis, the heart must work harder to keep blood moving forward. Over years, this extra effort can thicken the walls of the heart, or stretch its chambers, like a rubber band that has been pulled too far. Sometimes the problem arises in the rhythm itself. Arrhythmias, as we've explored, can make the heart beat too fast, too slow, or uncoordinated. When the ventricles lose their steady timing, the heart's pumping efficiency falls. In some cases, the result can be sudden and severe. There are also congenital heart defects, differences in the heart structure present from birth. Some are discovered early and repaired in infancy. Others remain hidden for decades before causing symptoms. Yet even in heart disease, the heart reveals its determination. Damaged muscle can sometimes heal. New pathways of circulation, called collateral vessels, may form around blockages, like side roads finding a way around a traffic jam. treatments, from medications that ease the heart's workload to procedures that open blocked arteries, support its quiet labour. If you or someone you love has faced heart disease, you know that it does not define a life. Many people live fully for years, carrying on with the same quiet courage their heart has shown all along. Tonight as you rest, know this: even when it is challenged, the heart remains a patient ally. It does not stop hoping. It does not stop working. It beats for you in every moment, no matter how hard the path may become. We've just explored how heart disease can unfold. Now, let's look more closely at one of the most pivotal moments a heart may face, a heart attack, and even more important, how the heart can recover. When a heart attack begins, it often does so without warning. A plaque inside a coronary artery ruptures. Blood cells rushing to repair it form a clot that blocks the vessel. Beyond the blockage, the muscle grows hungry for oxygen. You might imagine a garden hose pinched shut. The flow stops, and the plants beyond begin to wilt. The same principle applies here, though the stakes are immeasurably higher. In the first minutes, the heart muscle shifts to emergency measures. It tries to extract every last molecule of oxygen in the blood it has. But if circulation isn't restored quickly, cells begin to weaken. Their electrical activity becomes erratic. They may die if the blockage lasts too long. This is why every second matters. Treatments today are designed to open the artery as fast as possible, whether through medications that dissolve the clot or procedures that physically clear the blockage. The sooner the flow returns, the more heart muscle can be saved. Yet a heart attack is not always the end of the story. It is often the beginning of another one, a story of repair, resilience, and adaptation. After the immediate crisis passes, the heart begins to heal. Damaged cells are gradually replaced with scar tissue. This scar can no longer contract like healthy muscle, but the remaining healthy areas learn to pick up the slack. In the weeks that follow, new blood vessels sometimes grow around the injured region, a process called collateral circulation. These tiny channels, like side streets bypassing a blocked road, help keep oxygen flowing to cells still clinging to life. Recovery involves more than biology. It is a partnership between the heart and the person who carries it. Medications may be prescribed to ease the heart's workload, lower blood pressure, or prevent further clots. Cardiac rehabilitation programs help people regain strength, rebuild confidence, and learn habits that protect the heart for years to come. Emotions often run high after a heart attack. It is normal to feel afraid, uncertain, or even fragile. But over time, many people find a renewed sense of purpose, an understanding of how precious each heartbeat truly is. If you have ever walked beside someone through this journey, you know the small milestones that matter. The first walk down a hospital corridor, the first night back in one's own bed, the first day that feels ordinary again. It is worth remembering that recovery is not a race. The heart heals in its own time, and the mind and spirit heal just as patiently. Tonight, as you rest, perhaps you will think of this. Your heart, even when wounded, does not give up. It adapts. It grows new vessels. It learns new ways to keep life moving, no matter what it has faced. Whether it has never missed a beat or has survived the hardest trials, it remains your most loyal companion. Quiet, persistent, and always ready to begin again. In every corner of this journey, through chambers, valves, rhythms, and recoveries, one truth remains. Your heart, though resilient, depends on how you care for it. But supporting your heart's health doesn't require perfection. It doesn't ask you to become someone entirely new. Instead, it invites you to choose, again and again, small acts of kindness toward yourself. Perhaps you imagine heart health as a checklist of tasks, measuring blood pressure, counting steps, avoiding certain foods. While these tools can be helpful, the heart responds just as much to the quality of your days, the meals you savour, the walks you enjoy, the ways you soften stress. Movement is one of the most reliable gifts you can offer. You don't need to run marathons. Even a brisk walk can strengthen the heart, improve circulation, and ease blood pressure. Over time, regular movement trains your vessels to stay elastic, reducing the burden on your heart with every beat. Food is another language you can speak to your heart. Whole grains, colourful vegetables, legumes, lean proteins, and healthy fats like those in nuts and olive oil all nourish the arteries and the muscle itself. Each meal is a chance to send your body something it can use to repair, to build, to thrive. Stress, though harder to see, can weigh heavily. When your thoughts spiral, your body responds with tension. Faster heartbeats, tighter vessels, a surge of stress hormones. In small doses, this is harmless. But when stress becomes a constant undertow, it can wear on the heart's quiet strength. That is why simple practices, pausing for deep breaths, stepping outside to feel the air, sharing worries with a friend, are more powerful than they seem. Each small moment of ease helps lower the tide, allowing your heart to return to its natural steady rhythm. Sleep too deserves a place in this conversation. During deep rest, your heart rate slows, your blood pressure falls, and your body repairs itself. A regular sleep schedule, going to bed and waking up at the same time each day, can make this restoration more reliable. Connection and purpose also matter. Research shows that people with strong social bonds and a sense of meaning in their lives tend to have healthier hearts. A laugh with someone you love, a moment of stillness with your thoughts, these experiences nurture you in ways no prescription can. Finally, caring for your heart sometimes means seeking help. Regular checkups, screenings for cholesterol and blood pressure, and conversations with your doctor can catch concerns before they grow. There is no weakness in asking for guidance, only a quiet strength in choosing to know. Tonight, as you settle in, remember that your heart has been with you in every moment. The late nights, the early mornings, the moments of joy and doubt alike. It has never asked for recognition. It simply beats, content in its purpose. And in return, you can offer it these small kindnesses: a walk, a meal, a breath, a laugh. They may seem ordinary, but over time they become the greatest gift you can give. Before we conclude our journey, let's step away from the anatomy and physiology to explore something softer: how the heart lives in our imagination. No other organ has gathered as many metaphors or inspired as much poetry. Though we know with certainty that the heart pumps blood, not feelings, it has always stood as a symbol of our deepest emotions. Think about the words we use every day. We say someone has a kind heart when they are generous, or a heavy heart when they grieve. We call courage heart itself. Take heart, have heart, fight with all your heart. The shape of the heart, simplified into two graceful curves meeting in a point, has come to stand for love in every culture, even though no heart looks quite like that in the flesh. The ancient Egyptians believed the heart was the seat of the soul and the source of intelligence. When someone died, their heart was weighed against a feather to judge whether they had lived with truth. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the person could enter the afterlife. In ancient Greece, Aristotle thought the heart was the centre of thought and sensation, while the brain was little more than a cooling mechanism for the blood. Even centuries later, long after scientists had traced nerves to the brain, the heart kept its symbolic power, and perhaps that is fitting. Even if we know our feelings arise from patterns of firing neurons, the heart seems to echo them. It races when we are afraid or in love. It feels as though it aches when we are hurt. It stirs and thuds when something moves us. This blending of fact and feeling is part of what makes the heart so enduring as a metaphor. In literature, it stands for sincerity, from the bottom of my heart. In religion, it can mean the innermost self. In everyday life, it simply means caring, loving, or believing. You can see the heart's image everywhere, carved into tree trunks, printed on cards, worn on jewellery. We place our hand over our heart when we pledge or pray. We tap our chest when we speak of love or gratitude. These gestures remind us that despite all our science, some part of us still feels that our truer self lives behind the sternum. And perhaps there is something beautiful in that. The heart is neither brain nor soul, but it is faithful, pulsing with every change in mood, every shift in attention. Whether or not it houses our spirit, it surely participates in our experience of being alive. Tonight, as you lie in the quiet, you might feel your own heartbeat echoing softly. Think of all the centuries of poets, philosophers, and dreamers who have felt the same rhythm and wondered at its mystery. If nothing else, your heart is proof that you are here, feeling, hoping, and alive. A symbol and a reality, beating together in your chest. Over the centuries, the heart has gathered not only stories and symbols, but also a fair share of misunderstandings. Some of them have faded with time, while others linger quietly, shaping how we think about this faithful muscle. One of the oldest misconceptions is that the heart is the source of all emotions. Even after science traced feelings to the brain, people continue to say that love, sorrow, and joy come from the heart. And while it's true that strong emotions affect heart rate, making it pound, flutter, or slow, the feelings themselves arise in the networks of the nervous system. The heart is the messenger, not the origin. Another common belief is that the heart is perfectly symmetrical. In truth, it is slightly tilted and shaped more like a cone. Its left side is larger and more muscular, built to pump blood through the entire body, while the right side manages the shorter trip to the lungs. The familiar Valentine heart is a stylized image, beautiful but anatomically fanciful. Some imagine that heart disease is inevitable as we age, as if a lifetime of beats simply wears the heart out like an old shoe. In reality, while age does bring changes, much of heart disease is shaped by lifestyle, genetics, and other health conditions. Many people live well into old age with hearts that are strong and steady. There is also the myth that a heart attack always feels the same, a sudden, crushing pain in the chest. While this is common, heart attacks can present in many ways: pressure, discomfort in the jaw or back, shortness of breath, nausea, or a feeling of profound fatigue. In some cases, especially for women and older adults, the symptoms can be subtle. This is why any unexplained discomfort or breathlessness deserves attention. Another misconception is that the heart stops beating between each contraction, resting completely in the pause. In truth, the heart never truly stops. Even in diastole, when the ventricles relax, the atria are still at work and electrical signals are still travelling. It is not a machine that switches on and off, but a cycle of continuous flowing activity. One of the most enduring myths is that the heart, once injured, cannot heal. While it's true that heart muscle does not regenerate as easily as skin or liver tissue, the heart can adapt. Scar tissue forms, collateral vessels grow, and the remaining healthy muscle can learn to work more efficiently. Recovery is often possible, sometimes surprisingly so. Finally, some people believe that their heart beats exactly the same every moment. In reality, small variations in timing, known as heart rate variability, are a sign of health. Your heart speeds up and slows down in response to breathing, emotions, and countless signals from your body. This flexibility shows that the heart is responsive, alive to every moment. Tonight, as you lie in the quiet, perhaps you can feel your heart's rhythm. Not a simple metronome, but a living, shifting measure of your life. And if you ever hear a claim about the heart that sounds too simple, remember that this organ, though well studied, still holds a little mystery. In its quiet chambers and patient beats, it remains more complex and more hopeful than most myths can capture. Before we bring this journey to its close, let's linger on some small wonders, facts about the heart that might surprise you, even after all we've explored. You already know your heart beats about 60 to 100 times each minute while you rest. But over a day, that adds up to roughly 100,000 beats. Over the course of an average lifetime, your heart will contract more than 2.5 billion times without stopping once to rest. Each day, your heart moves about 2,000 gallons of blood, enough to fill more than 30 bathtubs. And yet it does this quietly, so discreetly you might forget it is working at all. Your heart is also a remarkably strong muscle. The force it exerts with every contraction is enough to squirt blood a few feet into the air if the aorta were opened, something that surgeons sometimes see during certain procedures. This strength, harnessed and focused, drives circulation through 60,000 miles of blood vessels. Even the smallest creatures have hearts that astonish. A hummingbird's heart can beat over 1,200 times per minute when it hovers, the fastest rate known among birds. In contrast, the heart of a sleeping blue whale beats as slowly as 2 beats per minute. Another curiosity, your heart produces its own electrical impulses. If you removed it from the body and kept it supplied with oxygen, it could continue beating on its own for a short time. This independence is possible because of the SA node, the natural pacemaker. Your heart has its own tiny electrical grid, but it also listens to signals from your brain. The vagus nerve, part of the parasympathetic nervous system, releases acetylcholine to slow the heart rate. The sympathetic nerves release norepinephrine to speed it up. This constant conversation between body and brain ensures your heart adjusts to every need. Perhaps the most poetic detail is how your heart begins. Around 22 days after conception, a tiny cluster of cells starts to contract. Even before there is a fully formed body or brain, there is a heartbeat. In a sense, it is the first declaration of life, a tiny percussion that grows stronger each day. In some cultures, this early heartbeat is called the quickening, the moment when something silent begins to sing. Even long after birth, that music continues, carrying you through every moment, through days you remember and those you forget. One last detail, your heart never stops listening. When you inhale, the rhythm shifts slightly, rising with the breath. When you exhale, it settles again. This small variability, called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, is a sign of health and adaptability. A heart that can change its tempo, even subtly, is a heart that is alive to every moment. As you lie here, perhaps you can feel that soft presence within you, the living drum, older than memory, steadier than thought. It is the quietest part of you, and yet it may be the most essential. In the end, the heart is not simply an organ or a metaphor. It is a companion, a part of you that never asks for thanks, never demands attention, but remains faithful all the same. Now, as our exploration draws toward its final pages, let's take a moment to simply reflect on all we've learned, and all the heart continues to do for you. So often, we imagine the heart only when something goes wrong, when the rhythm falters, or when discomfort makes us aware of its presence. But in truth, the heart is most miraculous in its constancy, when you don't feel it at all. In the quiet moments, lying in bed, breathing slowly, your thoughts drifting, it continues without hesitation. It does not demand your attention. It does not measure your worth or your accomplishments. It simply keeps its steady time. Consider all the different selves you have been, a child discovering the world, an adolescent finding your place, an adult building a life. In every version of you, the heart has been there, adapting to each chapter without complaint. Through every moment of fear or wonder, excitement or sorrow, the heart has adjusted, beating faster to supply oxygen when you were breathless with joy, slowing to let you rest when you were weary. If you have ever held your breath in anticipation, the heart waited with you, then resumed its work the moment you exhaled. And when you sleep, when you surrender conscious control, the heart does not pause to see whether you deserve its labour. It does not wait for instruction. It simply goes on beat by beat through every hour of the night. In this way, the heart teaches a lesson without words. That devotion does not require spectacle. That reliability can be as beautiful as brilliance. That the most profound acts of care often happen unnoticed. Perhaps you will never see your own heart as it truly is. The thick walls of the left ventricle flexing, the valves opening and closing like small doors, the swirl of blood moving through its chambers. But you feel the result of that work in every moment you remain here. If you ever wonder whether you're cared for, let your pulse be the answer. This quiet muscle has never left your side. Even before you had words to name it, it was there, keeping you alive. Even when your mind was full of doubt or distraction, it continued, unmoved by anything except the needs of your body. Tonight, as you settle deeper into stillness, you might rest a hand lightly over your chest. Feel the soft drum beat there, ancient and familiar. No matter how the world changes, this is your constant companion, steady, patient, content simply to keep you here. And that, perhaps, is the heart's greatest gift. To be both ordinary and extraordinary all at once. To remind you that simply being here, alive and breathing, is its own quiet triumph. And so, we come to the end of this gentle exploration. Thousands of words, a steady unfolding of the heart's hidden world. If you're still awake, perhaps you feel a little more familiar with the small drum inside you. Perhaps you can sense it now. A quiet presence, neither demanding nor dramatic, content simply to keep going. Let's take a moment to remember the paths we've followed. We've journeyed through chambers and valves, watching each contraction send a life onward. We've traced the delicate pathways of electricity, from the SA node's first spark to the Purkinje fibres fanning out across the ventricles. We've lingered in the capillaries, where oxygen leaves the blood and nourishes your every cell. We've stood beside the great veins, returning it all to start again. We've learned how your heart responds to laughter, to fear, to movement, how it heals when injured, how it adjusts its tempo to your every need, from the slow rhythms of sleep to the faster pace of joy or exertion. We've wondered at the myths, how people have imagined the heart as the seat of love, the house of the soul. We've uncovered small truths, that your heart began beating before you ever drew breath, and it will continue faithfully for as long as you live. And through all of it, the heart has remained the same quiet companion it has always been, unfussy, undistracted, unfailingly loyal. So tonight, as you lie in the hush of your room, you can let this knowledge settle lightly around you. You don't have to remember every detail. You don't have to hold on to every fact. Simply knowing that this small organ has carried you through every hour is enough. Perhaps you will place your hand over your chest one last time, feeling the soft rhythm there. Perhaps you'll think of it as an old friend, one who has never tired of your company. And if you are drifting now, somewhere between thoughts and dreams, let yourself rest. You have learned enough for tonight. You have earned this stillness. If you found this exploration calming, or if you'd like to join me for more quiet journeys into the wonders of science, I'd be grateful if you subscribed or shared this with someone who might need a peaceful pause. The heart will keep its rhythm, whether you are listening or not. It is content to carry you forward, softly, persistently, like a lullaby that has no end. Sleep well, wherever and whenever you are, and remember, your heart is always here, keeping time, patiently waiting for whatever comes next.